This is the weekly Grifball Hubcast, only on GrifballHub.com.
Episode 311, I am Sonic Nachos. Joining me is Oogy, or Ooglaf11. How are you tonight?
Hey.
I said tonight, it's
all
morning,
right.
Afternoon.
Yeah, afternoon.
I haven't been away for very long.
Yeah. All right, fair enough.
So, yeah, some stuff actually happened this week, unlike last week's where nothing was going on. We had AGLA playoffs finally kick off, and there were very little scheduling issues. It was nice. They actually played at the times they were supposed to play.
Mm-hmm.
So we had, what was it? On Wednesday it was Next Dimension against Hybrid Theory, I think?
Yes.
Yeah, and then Impulse Vital Signs was Thursday. So Next Dimension, that ended up going to 3 games. That was a very back-and-forth series.
Mm-hmm.
And then Next Dimension...
And Impulse won.
Yeah, Next Dimension moved on, and then Impulse had the 2-0. But they were both 5-4s, I think, if I remember right. Actually, I don't think we had a playoff game with a score that was a bigger blowout than 5-3. I can't remember a game that had a score like 5-2, 5-1, 5-0.
Yeah.
I think 5-3 was the furthest it got. I mean, I know in the Next Dimension series they had that comeback in Game 2 where Next Dimension was down 2-4 and then they scored 3 in a row to win that one 5-4. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, that would have been an elimination for them too, so that was definitely a huge accomplishment there. But for the most part, it was very close, very back and forth, both times around. I mean, Vital Signs, even though they got eliminated in 2, they were both 5-4s, if I remember correctly, so they were definitely in it. But regardless, it's going to be a Next Dimension and Impulse going into the championship next Wednesday on Wednesday Grifball, unless that doesn't happen, because apparently there is scheduling issues now, which is fun, but we're planning on it being on Wednesday still, because DJ has plans to have it for him to do the broadcast live from PAX. So with his schedule is very limited with that in mind, because he has it set up so he can do it there when he's in Seattle, but obviously also there's travel getting there in the first place, so like trying to do it earlier might not work. Doing it later, PAX itself is going to be going on, so we won't be able to do it. It's all kinds of difficult there. So as far as we're just kind of operating under the assumption that it's still going to be on Wednesday night Grifball next week, and honestly that's what would make the most sense for it. And then Thursday night Grifball we want to do the Emmy All-Stars, which could also be an issue because myself, Crowbar, and Trespass have all been nominated. And DJ will not be able to do it because he is at PAX. So
Trespass and I are the only ones left.
Well, Trespass is nominated.
Right. He might not be in it, but if
he has to
everybody gets in it,
right.
Then...
If all 3 of us get in it, then it's like, okay. Like one of us would have to broadcast while we play or something, but...
We're going to need Kenny.
Yeah, we would. You're not my boss, Sam says on Twitter. I don't know what? There's context I'm missing here.
Yes.
Oh, okay. It was a reply to your tweet. That's why I was confused.
Mm-hmm.
We both tweeted around the same time, and you were saying, "Oh, join us," and she's like, "Oh, you're not my boss." I thought she was responding to mine, which just said, "Oh, we're going live now, and we're talking about this." So it made no sense in that context. Okay.
Right.
Shout out to Sam, our AGLA admin, and one of the members of senior leadership, doing a lot of work. Yep. I have nothing else to follow up on that. All right, what were we talking about? We were talking about Emmy All-Stars. So that's...
Yes.
There's quite a few people nominated. I know Emmy's kind of just been a bit of a mess this season, just with all the alt accounts happening, and then Bad Intentions dying. Eclipse almost died because Venom got suspended, but they're playing out the season somehow with a 4-player roster, so props to them for that. That's definitely not easy, especially since they've lost Venom, who is a very solid player and probably one of the better skilled captains in the league. But, yeah, Emmy's kind of had a lot of issues with all that. I mean, most of it is stuff that we couldn't really have foreseen. Is just, players cheating, which there's not
happened
much.
On both sides of the season.
Yeah,
so,
Pro got hit by it too, but Amy definitely got the worst of it because one of the puppies was an Amy, so both of the alt accounts were an Amy, and then Pinhead's alt account, and that whole thing. It's 4 people, I think, in total, if I remember correctly, and then the whole Bad Intentions thing. It's, again, whole lot of stuff and a whole lot of drama happening, just like every other AGLA season. It wouldn't be the AGLA without drama. I know this from experience.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, no, there's still been a lot of very good players. There's been a lot of very good competition in AMI, though. That's kind of been the thing that's impressed me the most. Even though with all the drama and all the and everything happening, it's still been a very competitive season. I mean, we've seen a lot of back and forth. Yeah, like on the top of the league right now, both the Aftershock and Underrated have both clinched a spot in playoffs. And then the other two spots are just completely up in the air right now. Because Eclipse, obviously, they were in very good playoff position. Then the suspensions happened. They lost Venom, so that puts them in a kind of a rough spot there. And already, Oblivion managed to beat them last week in a 5-0. So, and I think we scored 1 goal against them in our first game, so we have a tiebreaker on them now. And our record is one game back. And then we beat Legendary twice, so we currently have the number 4 seed ahead of Legendary and 1 game behind Eclipse, but Legendary is only a half a game behind us. So, and then Supernova, they're 5-5, so they could easily make it into playoffs if they sweep us. So there's probably 5 or 6 teams at this point. I want to say 6 teams that could realistically make it into playoffs.
First come, first serve.
More or less. we have the 2 at the top, and then those 2 seeds. There's 4 teams that are in the running for that easily.
Yeah.
So that's going to be this next week's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. And actually, I'm not going to be able to play on the. I'm not going to be able to do anything for the championship probably because I think we have games that day. So that's going to be fun.
Yeah. This ship's going to be anybody's game.
Yeah, it's going to be. I assume you and DJ and Kenny again. That would be my guess.
Yeah. All the other producers are Nami.
Mm-hmm. Most of us are. Kenny's the only one who isn't. I think DJ is able to stream too, but obviously we usually
DJ's not Nami either.
He's in pro, yeah. But I'm saying he usually doesn't produce. We usually have him commentating.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually the people who do off the court stuff aren't in pro because we're not good. We had to make our name in other ways.
Right.
You're the exception at this point.
It seems that way. People don't take me seriously in pro anyway, so it's all good.
I mean, you were an all-star. I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, I was on the bottom of that list. But
you played in the game.
I made it, so yeah.
Take the compliment, Oogy.
Trying to be humble, okay?
Take the compliment.
Yes, thank you.
That's most of the news going on in the AGLA front at this point. So, yeah, again, championship's going to be on Wednesday at the normal Wednesday Grifball time at this time. I would keep an eye on the GrifballHub Twitter in case that is different. But yeah, the Hub Twitter at GrifballHub or DJ at DJ BluePDX, they will both be tweeting about it, I would assume, if any changes happen. But right now, we're operating under the assumption that it is going to be Wednesday Night Grifball again. It is the time slot that makes the most sense for it. And then Thursday Night Grifball will most likely be the ME All-Stars, assuming that the entirety of our production team isn't playing in that game.
Right.
Which is possible. We'll see what happens there, but
we'll make up.
Yeah, we really want that. We really want that to be broadcast. And honestly, there's nothing else for us to really broadcast on Thursday Night Grifball at that point. So, and I want to say the week after that we're going to start rolling into ME playoffs, and I don't think the schedule for that has been made yet. So we'll see. So we'll know more about that when the time comes. Yeah, because again, we're still looking for 2 teams to come down. But if it's similar to the AGLA, I think Monday and Wednesday were what was on the original calendar. I don't know if that's going to get rescheduled based on availability or whatnot. At that point, we don't. I'm not 100% sure how they're doing that. But
because we rescheduled the Vital Signs and Impulse game for Pro, so it would be on Thursday night.
That was originally Tuesday, but I don't know if they were scheduled for their availability or if we just did it for the stream. I wasn't involved in that, but yeah. We might end up seeing if we can do something like that. It depends. Again, that's nothing in ME playoffs is set in stone at this point, as far as we're aware. So we'll see what goes on with that. But that's the news for the AGLA at this point. GTL, we haven't talked too much about signups yet. That is probably going to start winding up towards sometime in September, early October. Usually things don't start to swing into that until after AGLA is completely done with. So
after Labor Day.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have been asking about GGL, but I mean, typically it is.
They're already done with AGLA season.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people who aren't even playing in the AGLA who are about it at this point. We've got a lot of new players. We've had kind of a sudden influx of new players at this point who want to play and get in, and
it's great.
It's always great. And I know a bunch of vets have been trying to put together stuff to get them into games and get them used to playing. So good on them for doing that. But GGL has always been one of the. It's weird. I feel GGL is supposed to be the friendlier to newer players because it's kind of that more recreational atmosphere, and you have the separate veteran divisions and classic divisions, so you kind of get paired with people on the same level as you. But at the same time, knowing from when I was a rookie, actually getting on a team if you don't have a group already is the most difficult part.
The hardest part.
So the AGLA is sometimes better in that respect. The problem is get drafted to a team and then usually don't end up seeing playing time because of how competitive it is.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to get into both of them, and there's no easy way to get around it because I think it's gotten better now. I think we're seeing more new players kind of stick around. I remember when I came into the league, it was we would see tons of people posting in free agents like saying, join our team, or I'm looking to be picked up by a team, it needs to be good. And obviously nobody's going to try out an unproven rookie who isn't doing anything in customs and whatnot. Nowadays you're seeing more custom lobbies kind of constantly being run and people trying to get games going and whatnot. So I
rushes
think,
and tournaments.
There's more mixers and whatnot being run, especially with AGLA, to get people's names out. So I think that's been the big thing is in the AGLA especially with AMI. New players.
Pretty sure that's how Galvanator got started too.
Yeah, I mean, new players are such a critical part of the AMI League just because there's a lot less proven talent at that point. So you see a lot more captains and a lot more people running mixers for that kind of out of necessity to do scouting and whatnot. So I think that's been a huge thing for them, and it certainly wasn't something that we intended when we first factored into the big league. I mean, it was part of it was that part of doing the big league was like, it's individual signups. It might draw in more people, but it's supposed to be exclusive. We don't expect to see them play. It just might make them hungry to get better and get picked up later. But we know AMI was never part of the original plan, and I've had a lot of issues with AMI in the AGLA because I think it detracted from the whole exclusivity that we were trying to do in the first place. But at the same time, AGLA has always had a strong community following, and kind of excluding part of that, I think it just ended up it's something that wouldn't have ended up working at this point. That's why our exclusive, our kind of like exclusive league is now being, or that focus on that is being redirected into the separate circuit, which I'll talk about in a little bit here. But I mean, the one good thing about AMI really, I think, is that it's really promoted a lot of more of events to get new people in and involved. I think we've seen a lot more of that, so that's been a great thing to see happen. It's been a great thing to come out of it. And it's definitely, again, like, I remember being a rookie I was fortunate enough that Zero Logic was getting put back together with almost none of their returning roster. So like, we're looking for players to play if you want to, and I reached out and like, I assume I'm not going to hear back because I'm a rookie, and Judas Feek, who was the captain, who has been the longtime captain of Zero Logic until he kind of left and I took over from him, he just kind of got back to me and was like, hey, we're going to run a scouting event here. I'm like, okay. And apparently I was good enough. I don't know what standards he had for evaluating talent there, but I got in. We lost to Boss Tycoon in the semifinals of AMI 2 seasons in a row, so that was fun.
Yeah.
I've never beaten Boss Tycoon in the semifinals of anything now. That's my entire career at this point.
So
2 seasons.
We're just gonna get boss banned again.
Yeah, that's why he's suspended now. Actually, we suspended him so that he rage quits, and then I can actually win ships now, without having to rely on Shadow.
Right.
Halo 3 was an outlier. I'm good at Halo 3. 5 is the only game that I've been decent at. But yeah, no, so that's most of what's been going on with AGLA and, again, GGL. We're going to hopefully start ramping up into that as we approach into the fall here. Again, late September, early October, I think, is going to be the most likely time that you'll see that happen. Again, it's a little awkward because we don't have...
More details to follow.
We don't have Cal and Goose at this point, so... Leadership Slack is blowing up. I don't have time to read that. They better not be telling me not to say stuff because I'm not reading it. But yeah, so I kind of touched on the circuit there for a second there, which right now we are tentatively calling the Grifball Pro Tour, and I think that's the name that's going to stick for it. I like the sound of that. I wanted to call it the Grifball Pro Circuit. That was actually the name I originally came up with for this idea when I first had the idea for a land circuit back when I was commish. But the AGLA kind of stole that for their pro league, so we can't do that anymore.
Dang.
So for now it's the pro tour is what we're running with now, but obviously it's a name, it can change. But I don't have too many issues with that. It reminds me a lot of Magic, which I based some parts of the original idea off of, because that card game has, I mean, for a card game, it's got quite a pro scene. It's very interesting. It's not something that you would imagine would have quite the following that it does, but there's quite a big pro scene for that. But the basic concept is the circuit is going to consist of a 8-team professional league, which is this sort of highly exclusive league that we've been chasing after for quite a while, that we tried to turn the AGLA into, but weren't able to do so. And it's going to, your rosters are going to be low. Right now I have it as 4-man rosters, and you have the ability to bring in stand-ins, and you have a lot more flexibility with roster moves and whatnot. So I think that's part of it you see too. I think if you look back to old Classic League setup, or if you look to GGL currently, GGL has 10-man rosters. Right. So one super team, as people like to call them, could actually be 2 super teams with the amount of talent that go to that team, with the amount of talent that they can pick up. In old school AGLA was 8 players, so it was a bit of the same thing. When you force rosters down to 4 and 5, which again the AGLA has kind of gone on the same route there, you're kind of just forcing teams to get their starting roster in. Since the goal of the circuit is that it's not a huge time commitment as far as games per week goes, if you're in the professional league, you're playing 1 game a week, and then there's going to be tournaments and other events run on the circuit periodically every couple of weeks or so that you can participate in, but those are obviously optional. The Pro League is kind of the meat of it. It's a little bit easier for teams to commit to that with a smaller roster. I think when you look at some of the leagues that we have, some of the teams that we have set up now for like GGL and AGLA, like in GGL with veteran divisions, you have teams who are signing up to play like 24 games, which is 4 games a week. 4 games a week, you can't really make that with a 4-man roster unless all you do is Grifball. For those of us who have real life and whatnot, it's very
schedule
difficult
conflicts.
To make. And that's why I think that's why we've seen AGLA scale back from 4 to 3 games a week, is to just because there's a lot of people who can't commit to that 4-game-a-week requirement, and with roster shrinking there, you can't realistically expect teams to be able to consistently make 4 games a week with a 5-man roster unless they're super try-hard and do nothing else.
Unemployed.
Yeah.
All good stuff.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see a stronger push towards 2 games a week in AGLA at some point in the future if the circuit ends up happening, just because I think a lot of the people that really want to play more Grifball are going to start to come on over to this pro circuit, and you're going to have them doing those concurrently, but I can't speak for the admins. That's something that I could see.
Right.
But yeah, it's again the games per week requirement. It gets difficult. And I kind of hate. It's weird because I used to be part of the side that used this argument, and now I hate seeing the argument. I've completely flip-flopped on it. But you see a lot of people who are just like, oh, if you can't make the time commit, the AGLA just isn't the league for you. And it's like, with our numbers, are we really in a position to be forcing people away just for time commitments? We're not. If we were paying our players, then it would make sense because you were getting paid to make that sort of time commitment, or you were competing for a huge cash prize. But that has not been the case for the AGLA for quite some time. Instead, like most people are doing this. I mean, they're not doing it to be. They're not doing this to make money. They don't. So if they don't have that huge time commitment, or they aren't willing to make sacrifices for that, that's obviously understandable. And I don't think we can realistically force them to turn away. I would rather see the leagues I would rather see the AGLA kind of scale back to that sort of 2 to 3 game a week mark. The way we have it now isn't terrible, but again, 2 games a week is always kind of been the sweet spot that we've seen. You could maybe make it a longer season, like 2 games a week for 7 weeks or something instead. But it's, and then on top of that, you could run more events like tournaments and whatnot along the side. Or again, once the circuit kind of comes in and becomes implemented, then you're going to have some open events that come with that as well, and that's
something for everybody.
Yeah, like there's ways to get people more Grifball without upping the time commitment for everybody else who is fine with the amount that they're playing now. I would rather see more focus go on doing that than on changing it for everybody. But yeah. And Cannon in chat, the game itself is forcing people away. I think some people have been turned off by Halo 5. The big thing for me is that there's no launching. That's something that's kind of always been there. Even in 4, you couldn't do flowers or hammer jumps or anything like that, but you could still launch.
Right.
The physics in this game just aren't really set up to it. Or at least if it's possible to launch consistently this game, we haven't figured it out yet. But so far, it seems like you can launch, but you just become vulnerable. The runner just becomes paper when it happens.
Yeah.
So
it's just too easy to pop them out of the sky.
It takes out. I think if we had, I think if launching was a bit more closer to Halo 4, or any of the previous iterations of the game, I think 5 would play a lot better. Because I look at passing, and
having
I think passing
shields work properly would work.
Yeah,
better for that too.
Passing, for example, I think is the biggest thing for me in 5. In 4, it was just awful. I hated it because the ball lofted so long in the air, and it could go so far. Like, you would just have teams that would constantly throwing it back and whatnot. You could basically throw it the entire length of the court. In 5, the ball is heavier. It drops immediately. So if you're in a position where you're on the wall, if you're in position on the wall, like you're kind of backed up against your own wall, you have the ball, and you're trying to throw it to the far corner to get it out from if you're the runner in trouble. At this point, that ball is going to land over there within like a second or two. So if you're completely swamped on your own wall, that's not going to help you. In 4, that ball is going to be in the air long enough that you'll buy enough time to be able to clear out a couple key kills. Or you can throw it far enough back that it's going to take them long enough to get the ball that you have enough time to get some tanking space. In 5, the ball is thrown too fast, and there's just not enough time to really use that hang time to clear out your spawn.
Yeah.
You're still going to be on the defensive. So I think that's why we're seeing a lot less of these sort of like 2-hour long games that we saw in Halo 4 with Pat Ball just constantly getting passed back. The same tactics are still there.
In a way, it's better.
Yeah, the same tactics are still there, but it's so much faster paced because of the weight of the ball and how fast it takes for it to being thrown to landing. The only downside to it is I think it's a little bit more difficult to defend against the pass because you can't deflect it. And just a hammer swing anywhere in the vicinity would send it flying. Now, because of the greater weight, you really have to be on target. It does take more skill, but yeah, the game type, I don't know how I feel about it entirely. I'd like it the way it is now. I would like to see how slide at 70% works. But like with shields and whatnot, it's always so hard to tell because shields has always felt inconsistent to me. It's a sort of thing
because there are no shields.
Yeah, I'm talking about like compared to like matchmaking where you have shields. When shields are actually up, it's inconsistent because if someone's shield is popped, your range is different. There's a whole new mental element to it, but there's also there's a lot more randomness that kind of goes on. You see with it. With no shields, it's more consistent. People die when you expect them to die, but it also obviously, I think the best thing for us would be if 5 let the runner have shields independent of everybody else, the way it's always been. Because of how it's set up now, how it's a multiplier where, like, if no players has shields, the runner doesn't have shields, and you have to adjust health. I think that's what screws us here. Because now, like to use the launching again as an example, when you don't have shields as the runner, right?
Real fragile.
Yeah, in the past when you would launch, you would maybe pop their shields. Like, their shields has to pop before they take health damage. So if you didn't pop their shields entirely, they could still survive a hit. But now if they now when we just have health, you don't have that shield barrier anymore. The shields doesn't have to pop. And then you're just one swing can kill you at that point. And when you're in the air like that, especially when you don't have that high launch distance in 5, it doesn't work out. And launching has always been a huge part of the game, so it's sad to see that kind of get removed. But yeah, it's one of those things. A lot of people have been talking about it in the forums, where like they just don't really know why they don't like 5 compared to everything else. They just don't. And it's kind of the same thing. Like,
it's probably why.
Yeah, it depends. I think there is some testing that we can still do. Again, the 70% is one that I really wanted to test because I was talking with Ray when he made that, and that's something that could be interesting. But yeah,
I think we agree that Digital Pain's game type isn't the best one for Halo 5 right now.
Yeah, and again, the big thing is if 343 can let us give the runner shields independent of everybody else, that would be great. That would be my biggest thing is runner needs shields, but we can't give him shields without giving everybody else shields, and everybody else with shields is inconsistent. So it's such a huge trade. It's such a huge trade-off.
Yep.
But yeah, I think those are the two things that I would really like to see happen. And obviously, one we can't control, but if the nerf slide can gain traction, that could be interesting to see how it works. But to kind of focus back on the circuit, and because we got derailed a little bit there, it's you have that 18 pro league. It's going to be they play one game a week against other professional league teams, and then there is also a tournament circuit that kind of runs concurrently to that. If you're a pro team, you get higher seeding in those sort of events, and whenever depending on how you place in one of the tournament circuit events, you earn points on the pro league ladder or the pro circuit ladder. And also winning professional league games also earns you points on the slider. Basically, anything you can do in the pro tour will earn you points on that, and that helps determine things like seeding, invites to certain invitational tournaments. The major championship at the end of the season, you'll have some slots go to teams based on their performance in professional league. And then teams who did well in the ladder overall will get remaining invites. And then there's also 2 qualifier slots for a qualifier that goes into the tournament. So the idea of it is that the focus is on these 8 pro teams. But because a lot of the tournaments are open to any team that's registered with the Pro Tour, you don't have to be in that exclusive 8-team league. And there's also those qualifiers beforehand. You have a lot of teams that may have just missed the professional circuit who may severely have big skill jumps. As the season progresses, you can still see them having a chance to get in and possibly make an impact in the championship at the end of the season. And again, same with the qualifiers. That gives the professional league teams that didn't get in off of record or ladder a second chance to get in. It gives new teams or new talent coming in a chance to try to get in there. It kind of gives you a nice mix of that exclusivity whilst also allowing other teams a chance to get in. And the professional league itself, that membership to that is going to be based on. There'll be a qualifier held before the season, which will most likely be some sort of a Swiss tournament, because if you get a lot of teams signing up for something like that, that's the only way to realistically narrow it down in any reasonable amount of time. And that's going to determine what teams get in there. And then in future seasons, right now the plan is there's either going to be 2 or 3 seasons a year, and the year is going to ramp into RTX in the summer. So if you win, like teams that win a major championship, they will get an invite to the RTX tournament. And ideally what I would like to do is eventually have it where we have a prize pool big enough where we could make it so that the team that wins a major championship would have like their travel to the RTX paid for, or like their prize for winning the major championship would be basically like a travel stipend to that or something. It depends.
Well, I had a question posed to me earlier about RTX tournament because it was all online. Relatively, could someone that wasn't at RTX compete with the other players if they showed up to the party?
Are you saying? You mean people like outside of, like people who aren't at RTX still competing in the tournament?
Yeah.
You could do that, but I prefer not to because a huge part of it is, I mean, like, there isn't true LAN, yes, but everybody is still on the same playing field because everybody has the exact same connection to the server.
Right.
And basically if you could say that you can have teams play online in the RTX tournament, then it's sort of like what's the point of having the RTX tournament? The whole point is that it's there. You can see the players there participating.
Yeah. The show and the exclusivity.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just it's not just for the people watching, but also for the players themselves. The actual being there it's kind of such a different
part of the
environment.
The requirements.
Yeah, and I think if he makes it to, it doesn't work out, and I honestly can't think of a single esport league or anything like that uses anything like that.
Yeah.
It's
honestly.
It's difficult because the E1 doesn't have LAN, but again, like the main thing is everybody is on the same playing field. That's the key part of it. And you have everybody in the same location, all with the same connection to the server. I mean, that's the closest you can get with the Xbox One currently. So, I know I wouldn't be in favor of that. I would, even like qualifiers, I wouldn't really want to do online for that. I would want that to be like you would have an attendee qualifier on Friday and then the main event Saturday, Sunday.
Get in based on
which is kind of
more or
what
less
we did
superior
this year.
connection.
Yeah, that's kind of what we did this year. We had the attendee events going on Friday, and then we ramped into the proper tournament on Saturday and Sunday, which was also good because we had teams like Rage wasn't able to get in because of all of his flight issues, and originally he was supposed to get on Saturday, but he got delayed until Sunday, so they had to use a stand-in there. But if you have players who are in situations like that where they can't be in on Friday or they can't be in right when the convention opens, you can still get those teams a chance to get in there. It's a little bit easier for those teams that are invited to make it and be present for that event. But yeah, I got derailed again. I can't think of what I was talking about. But yeah, okay. So yeah, there's 2 to 3 seasons a year is the plan. They would ramp into the RTX Championship, which is where the bulk of the prize pool money would be at, and then ideally we would also have prizes for each of the major championships. Those would be the events that I would prioritize getting funds to because those are going to be the biggest events. But yeah, and the first, in order to get into the professional league, that's going to be that Swiss qualifier. After the first season that we run of it, the teams that place well in the major championship will automatically get an invite into the professional league, and then the remaining slots will be determined through qualifiers. So I know that's something that we're still discussing, but like the top 2 to 4 teams in the major championship might make it in. Cool. I'm trying to think. It's part of it depends on how exactly the major championships end up being formatted, because it could be like we could have it set up where it's an 8-team tournament. The problem is with an 8-team tournament, you might just have everybody in the professional league making it in between, even though and then it kind of kills the entire point of the professional league. So I don't want it to be 8 teams. I would want it to be like 6 teams, like have 4 teams from the pro league and then 2 teams come in from the qualifiers. That's the setup that I actually have aimed for it right now. You would have 6 teams. You would have the 4 teams from the pro league go at it in the first 2 rounds, and whoever loses that first round, they play one of the qualifier teams. So basically, if you lose in the first round, it's double elimination. You're not out. You have a chance to come back and rise your way back up through the tournament. So it's sort of like buys in a way, but not really. I think it's
point
a better
system
way.
Almost.
Yeah, I think it's a better way of running a non-even tournament than having buys. Than just having somebody automatically advance to semifinals. And this way, you still have to win the same number of games to make it all the way up. So that's how I would see that ring currently. That's something that could be discussed a lot. We haven't tried. I don't think we've tried a format like that before. So it might just be a thing where like we run a test season, we have a championship like that, and it's absolutely terrible, and we decide to kill it with fire and never use it again. But yeah, Cannon, I like the Hubcast at this time too. It means I don't have to wake up early. It's fun.
Yes.
And I can't imagine what it's like for DJ over on West Coast.
Right.
Having to wake up at like
He always has to have coffee.
8 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I tend to stay up late on weekends, so this is much better for me, and I assume for everybody else. But yeah, that's the plan for the circuit right now. Is again, that's sort of the overarching concept. Whoop.
Cool.
Rumors about we should not talk about that yet, but yeah.
All right.
I mean, I'll mention the context for what he's trying to ask about. Basically, Melvin has announced on the forums that he will be stepping down as admin after the seasons, and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of. I mean, Melvin is a good friend of mine. He was awesome down at RTX. We had a lot of fun recording a podcast that we can never release because it'll get us banned. Alcohol was involved. But yeah, he's stepping down. He's going to be stepping down as admin. New admin hasn't really been discussed yet, so that's not something that I want to talk about here. But there's a lot of people who have been stepping it up in the community who we could definitely pull
Mm-hmm.
from. There's definitely people who would do well at it. So that's something that'll be discussed among senior leadership, and we're going to do what's best for the league and for the community.
Cool. So what's next?
That is all I have. Was those two, the circuit and the AGLA playoffs. There's not a whole lot else coming on. I mean, again, we talked a little bit about
season's
GGL,
winding down.
Yeah. Again,
Details for the next one haven't come out yet. So.
But yeah, with the circuit again, once we kind of get through the rules draft, the rough draft of the rules, and get more of that nailed down, I'll talk more about that on the Hubcast, and eventually I would like to be able to just release kind of that rule document and just kind of say like, hey, this is what it's going to do. We're going to run a test season here and here. Right now, the goal is to have a test season either early next year or late this year. It depends on how soon everything comes together. And again, part of it is originally the setup was going to be 3 seasons a year going into the RTX Championship. We might be scaling that down to 2 a year just because the way the schedule works, because each season is a lot longer than what your normal season would be. It's because of that 1 game a week thing. It would be like a 12-week regular season with 1 game a week, or a 14-week regular season where you play each other team twice. It'd be a little bit longer time commitment, but a less intensive time commitment. So it's going. What would most likely happen at this point was we might scale that down to 2 seasons a year, and then we would have 1 test season early 2017 for that. I think that's going to be the most likely thing that we'll do. We'll just have that 1 test season go into the RTX Championship, and then following RTX 2017, then we'll ramp into the first season. But again, there's a lot of moving parts still that are going into that, so we will see how that works.
We're looking at increasing overall availability without losing our competitive atmosphere.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I'm excited for it, though. It's something that I've poured a lot of work into lately, and I know there's a lot of other people who have been involved with it that are very excited. I know Pimp, he put in a lot of work doing the original concept for it, and he's been helping kind of go over the rough drafted rules and seeing how that goes down. So he's been a huge help there. Tonga and PD bounced a lot of ideas off in the early phase, and then obviously a lot of people in senior leadership have weighed in on it as well. Rage has been huge. He's been reading over the rules document currently and kind of looking at it and offering his feedback on that. And we've had a couple other people in leadership offer their way in as well. Shanzi and Sam were 2 big ones that I remember correctly. Ali's talked in. It's been building a lot of excitement. A lot of people are really interested to just kind of see where we go with it. So it's something that I'm very excited to see how it
overhauling the season, the way it's built from the ground up, and the way the site looks and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, there's a lot of changes that we would like to be able to make. And again, we can't change everything. Obviously, like Goose and Cal are still out, so there's a lot of decisions that have to go through them. But there's a lot of stuff that we would like. There's been a lot of new ideas. I think lately around the league, we've seen kind of a huge boost in people wanting to get involved and whatnot, and that's great to see. And it gives us a lot of ideas and concepts that we can see about trying to go through and implement to make Grifball and the hub better.
Sounds good.
I think for me, that's about all I had to talk about. Oogy, do you have anything else to talk about that isn't Pokemon?
Nope. I pretty much put my points forward, so we're looking good. More community content's coming out. We've got ideas floating around about how we can change how the league works, and as soon as we get ideas bounced around in the admins, then we'll go ahead and implement them. But for now, everything's still in the concept phase.
Yep. I will give a shout out, however, to Pop-Tart, who has done a ton of work. Both the organizing Pro All-Stars, now AMI as well, and obviously he's done all the stats work and everything else. I know we've shouted him out quite a few times on the Hubcast, but he has been a huge help this AGLA season. Again, between stats and running the All-Star games and whatnot, he's been getting very involved, and that's always something great to see from the community. He's definitely not the only one. We've had Rain, Tonga, and all of them with their bring in the AGLA podcast. Tonga has done, and Rain have both done a lot of articles and whatnot as well. There's been a lot of content, but again, Pop-Tart's basically been the MVP this season. He has been huge off the court, and he's contributed a lot, so that's always great to see.
All right. I think that's all we got.
Yeah, I believe that is all I have. So thank you everyone for tuning in.
Next week.
Again, this will be at the same time next week at 2 p.m. Eastern. And we will catch you all then. Hopefully we will have DJ. Actually, DJ will probably still be in Seattle for PAX, so I don't know if he'll be able to do it. We haven't talked about that yet. It might just be the two of us, but we'll see how that works out. But again, same time, 2 p.m. Eastern next week, and this week, Championship is going to be on Wednesday again, Wednesday Night Grifball, 9 p.m. Eastern. That might get changed. Keep an eye on the GrifballHub Twitter and on DJ Blue's Twitter to see if that changes at all, but we are doing everything possible to make sure that date stays. We don't see any reason that the championship needs to be rescheduled, seeing as how it has been on the 31st since the start of the season. So right now I would go forward under that assumption. If it changes again, we'll talk about it, but that's going to be the most likely time, Wednesday the 31st, 9 p.m. Eastern, and then next day, Thursday Night Grifball, we're going to have the AMI All-Stars again, and part of that depends on how much of our production team ends up playing in that game, but we'll find a way to make it work. So that's going to be 9 p.m. on Thursday. Yes. Yeah, we'll figure out some way to make it work, even if it's just me broadcasting while playing and Oogy commentating over or something. We'll find a way.
We got to stop being so good at Grifball.
Yeah. Dude, I'm in AMI. What are you talking about?
In our respective leagues, then.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll see you all next time.
Yep. Everyone, you have a good week, and we will catch you all later.
Thank you for listening to the Grifball Hubcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @GrifballHub for all the latest in Grifball news and entertainment.